Have you ever met someone who always smiles at you, speaks gently, yet leaves you uneasy the moment you turn away? What unsettles us is that outwardly they appear as a friend, while inwardly they calculate like a predator. They do not seek genuine connection. They seek entry into your mind to exploit your trust and step by step rob you of your peace. The Romans long ago recognized this truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the more someone strains to appear close, the more cautious you must become. Evil is not always loud. Often it comes quietly through flattery, through nods wrapped in concern. Yet this does not mean you are powerless. The Stoic does not confront with anger, but with clarity. No shouting, no display, only a mind kept steady and firm. In this journey, I will share 5 vital principles to help you recognize and dissolve the games of manipulators. 1. Fear is not meant to be given away. Fear is a natural part of being human. It is a primal signal formed to protect us from danger, to remind us when risks are near, and to prepare us for action in uncertain moments. Yet at the same time, fear can become the greatest weakness of the mind if it is exploited by those with malicious intent. A manipulator does not need violence or open schemes. They only need to know what makes you anxious, what loss you dread, what thoughts haunt you, and from there, they can lead you into their control. For this reason, allowing others to touch your deepest fears is not an act of openness. It is often the act of handing them a weapon. When we observe daily life, we see that most people share their worries far too easily. Some admit they fear rejection, others confess a fear of failure, and some even reveal hidden shame they would rather no one recall. In a friendly context, this may appear as honesty. But in the eyes of someone with ill intent, it becomes a map into your inner world. The more they know what you fear, the easier it becomes to shape your behavior. For human beings tend to avoid what they dread and will even act against reason just to escape anxiety. Stoic philosophy has long emphasized that it is not events that disturb us, but the judgments we place upon them. Epictetus wrote, "We are not troubled by things, but by the opinions we have about them." This means fear itself is not the threat. It is our willingness to let it govern our actions that turns it into danger. One who understands this principle does not extinguish fear, but studies it, analyzes it, and holds it within discipline. In contrast, the person who exposes fear carelessly becomes easy prey, for others can press directly upon that weakness to control them. Imagine a simple scene at work. An employee constantly worries about being judged as incompetent. If he reveals this in the wrong conversations, a malicious colleague can exploit it, repeating his fear at critical moments to erode his confidence. A passing remark, "Are you sure you're capable of this?" may cause him to hesitate, withdraw from opportunity, or doubt himself. What began as an inner fear is turned into an external instrument of control. Notice here, the manipulator does not create the fear. They simply exploit what already lives in the mind. The Stoic does not deny emotions or pretend they do not exist. They accept that fear is natural, but insist that emotions must be disciplined. To discipline emotion is not to reject it, but to know when to reveal it and when to keep it to oneself. A disciplined mind is like a guard at the city gate, opening only for what is necessary, remaining silent and watchful for the rest. This does not make you cold. It makes you strong and unreadable. Some mistake discretion for coldness. In truth, protecting one's fears is not avoidance, but a conscious act of refusing to become another's plaything. The Stoic listens more than they speak, observes carefully before revealing any weakness, and always asks, Will speaking this help me grow, or will it make me vulnerable? This question becomes a filter so that sharing does not turn into spiritual self-sabotage. One useful practice for disciplining fear is stillness and journaling. Writing down worries is not for complaint, but for clarity. When you write, "I fear failure at work," you create space to ask, what is failure? What does it truly mean? Does it destroy me? Or is it only a step in learning? The answers often reveal that most fears have no real power. They grow only when imagination feeds them, and once you see them clearly, others will no longer reach those weaknesses so easily. The Stoics also advise the deliberate practice of silence. This does not mean never sharing, but sharing selectively. You may have trusted friends, those who prove loyalty and steadiness through action, not words. With them, sharing can foster connection and empathy, but in vague relationships, silence becomes your shield. For once words leave your mouth, they no longer belong to you. They may be used rightly or twisted and turned against you. When fear is kept under discipline, others will find it far harder to use it as a tool of manipulation. Even if they try, the trained mind does not panic. Instead, it observes, notes, and responds with clarity. And when manipulators see you are no longer predictable, they lose their power. A person who does not react as expected is a person who cannot be led. In the end, mastering fear does not mean erasing it. No one lives without fearing anything. The difference lies here. Either you master fear, or it masters you. If you are the master, fear becomes preparation, keeping you alert, careful, awake. If fear rules you, it becomes a chain, and others need only seize the end of that chain to pull you wherever they wish. 2. Hasty trust is a trap. In daily life, we often tend to trust too quickly. A pleasant word, an action that seems sincere, or a well-timed smile can be enough for us to open our hearts. Trust is the foundation of every relationship, and without it, human beings cannot bond. Yet this very trust, when given in haste, becomes the most dangerous trap a manipulator can set. For they need no force, no threat, only your unexamined trust, and half the battle is already won. Hasty trust makes us overlook irregular signs. When someone gives us information, instead of asking its source or watching patiently, we often react emotionally, agreeing or rejecting at once. The manipulator knows this well. They know that if they create urgency, if they make you feel you must decide now, you will not have time to reflect. In that moment, you believe not because evidence is clear, but because you fear missing out. Stoic philosophy has long taught that human freedom lies in the pause between what we hear and how we choose to respond. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks ill of you, do not rush to defend yourself. Simply remember, they have not yet discovered all your other faults." At first glance, the lesson seems simple, but its power is immense. It reminds us that we need not rush to believe, nor to oppose, but to keep the mind calm so as not to be pulled into another's game. In today's world, the speed of information makes us even more vulnerable to this trap of hasty trust. Media and social networks constantly flood us with shocking headlines, sensational stories, and unverified news. Readers, in their haste, form opinions after only a glance at a line of text. And in personal relationships, it is the same. A rumor, a clever remark, or a false compliment can shift how we see others. Truth moves slowly, but lies always try to run fast. Thus, to avoid this trap, the Stoic trains the habit of believing slowly. To believe slowly does not mean distrusting all things, nor rejecting every message. It simply means giving the mind a breath, a pause, before allowing anything to become an inner conviction. When you hear praise, ask, is this spoken from true concern, or as a way to win my approval? When you hear criticism, ask, is this based on truth, or only meant to diminish me? When you hear news, ask, where is the source, what is the motive, and who stands to gain? The Stoics taught that reason is the only fortress protecting us from manipulation. When we trust in haste, we build walls on sand, left to collapse in the storm. But when we test and verify, we build on stone, steady against the waves. A mind trained to slow down will no longer be swept away by passing emotions. It will not need to rush to defend itself, nor hurry to agree. It simply observes, examines, and then chooses. Manipulators know that people fear being seen as suspicious. Many want to appear approachable, so they trust quickly to prove generosity. Yet this very fear of being judged becomes the open door for others to step through. The Stoic is different. They are not afraid of being seen as slow, nor of being thought closed off. They know wisdom lies not in pleasing others, but in guarding clarity within. To practice, you may follow simple steps. When you hear new information, instead of reacting, ask 3 questions. What is the source? What is their motive? Has this been verified? If the answers are unclear, do not let your mind turn it into truth. When someone urges urgency, remember, truth never demands haste. Truth can wait, only lies insist you act at once. Picture your mind as a gatekeeper. Each piece of information is a guest. If you open the gate to everyone simply because they smile, your fortress will soon fall. But if you make them wait, observe, question, and open only when sure, you will preserve safety. This is not coldness, it is prudence. It is not blind suspicion, it is respect for truth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Be like the rock upon which the waves break. Though the sea crashes endlessly, the rock remains unmoved." This reminder is not only about enduring hardship, it is also about holding steady amid the noise of information. Waves may surge, but you need not move with them. Stand still, and they will fade. When you learn to believe slowly, you become unpredictable and hard to manipulate. The deceiver cannot lead you with tales. They cannot redraw reality with words. And even if they try, you can remain apart watching without being caught. This is true freedom, not freedom from the voices of others, but freedom from letting your mind depend on them. In the end, hasty trust is a wide open door for manipulation. But disciplined trust granted only after observing and testing becomes the foundation of freedom and peace. The Stoic does not lock their heart. They still love, still trust, but they trust with reason, not haste. And this is why they can live in a world of rumors, yet remain unshaken within. 3. When joy clouds reason. In common thought, many believe people are most vulnerable when they suffer, feel lonely, or face disappointment. They assume weakness is the moment others can most easily take advantage. This judgment is partly true, but incomplete. In reality, danger hides in another time, subtler, harder to detect. The moment of joy, when the soul is filled with excitement and openness. For in joy, we relax our guard, we trust more, we open more, and that is the moment when reason is most easily obscured. Joy is a precious emotion, yet it can become the mask others exploit to gain entry. When you are happy, everything seems painted in brighter colors. A word is heard more easily, a proposal accepted more quickly, a trust given more freely. In that state, you seldom question, seldom analyze, and even less often refuse. Manipulators know this rule well, and they often wait for the moment of your greatest happiness to strike. For then, you do not see with clarity, but through the lens of euphoria. Seneca once warned that no emotion, however positive, should be allowed to overpower reason. He wrote that a grateful heart is noble, yet also reminded us that joy must never cause us to lose control. The Stoic is not against joy. They do not advocate coldness or indifference, but insist that every emotion must remain within discipline. They see joy as fire. When governed, it warms and lights. When left unchecked, it can blaze and destroy. The danger lies in how people equate joy with safety. When spirits are high, we assume what surrounds us carries good intent. When praised, we believe in sincerity. When achieving success, we think all doors stand open. Yet this belief is a trap, for joy does not always come with truth. At times, it only paints the world in excessive optimism, causing us to overlook warnings that deserve our attention. The Stoic trains vigilance even in moments of happiness. They enjoy joy, but do not let it govern their actions. They know happiness is an inner state, not a license to judge wrongly. Thus, they hold a pause between joy and action, allowing reason to enter. They may smile, they may enjoy, but when facing important choices, they still ask, if I were not joyful, would I agree to this? If calmer, would I act the same way? This practice is like placing a transparent glass between emotion and action. Joy may come, it may spread, but the glass reminds you that action must pass through reason's filter. The Stoic calls this living by principle, not by emotion. They clearly distinguish between enjoying a moment and letting that moment dictate the course of life. One principle you can apply is the rule of delayed decision. When an opportunity appears while you are joyful, give yourself at least 24 to 48 hours before answering. This brief time is enough for emotion to settle, and you will see more clearly. If the decision remains sound after joy has passed, it is worthy. If it only makes sense while you are excited, it belongs to emotion, not to wisdom. It must also be noted that joy can be used for manipulation, not only through flattery, but also through social pressure. When many are congratulating you, when you are surrounded by recognition, you may not wish to disturb the atmosphere by refusing or doubting. Thus, you consent merely to prolong joy, but in that moment you exchange clarity for temporary comfort. The Stoic reminds you, true joy does not depend on pleasing others, but on holding to principle even when applause surrounds you. Picture yourself standing at a celebration, everyone's eyes on you, praise and recognition pouring in, and at that moment a proposal is made. If you say, "I need more time to think," no one can rightly fault you. But if you nod too quickly, the consequences may follow you far. Thus, slowness here is not only a skill but a mark of strength. It shows you do not let circumstances, however pleasant, replace your judgment. Joy, like sorrow, can blind us. Sorrow makes us want to surrender. Joy makes us want to agree. But both can lead us away from principle. This is why the Stoic considers controlling joy as vital as controlling pain. They live with emotion, but they do not let emotion lead. They allow themselves happiness, but remind themselves that happiness must not become an excuse to abandon reason. When you hold clarity and joy, you discover a new kind of strength, the strength of balance. You see, you can enjoy a moment without letting it decide everything. You see a smile no longer equals agreement. And you see that the most enduring joy is not that which comes from circumstances, but that which rests upon the foundation of self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that happiness does not come from having things go our way, but from acting rightly regardless of circumstances. In that spirit, joy is only worthy when it does not pull us from principle. And this means you need not reject joy, you need only keep it behind reason, not in the driver's seat. 4. Gratitude is not a chain. Gratitude is one of the noblest human virtues. It sustains social bonds, nurtures respect, and reminds us that we do not exist in isolation. When someone helps us, whether in great or small measure, to remember and honor that kindness is essential. Yet this noble quality can be twisted into an instrument of control when exploited by those who know how to use it. Manipulators understand that people fear being seen as ungrateful, and this very fear makes many agree to demands that cross their boundaries. Without clarity, we allow gratitude to turn into a chain, binding ourselves to the expectations and commands of others. In reality, some are willing to use their help as leverage. They may say, "I supported you once, so now you owe me this." The words sound reasonable, but the essence is coercion. When a favor is turned into pressure, it ceases to be a favor. It becomes a hidden transaction with conditions attached. And once we are drawn into it, we no longer act by reason and principle, but by fear of being called ungrateful. Stoic philosophy reveals an important boundary. You may be grateful without submitting. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, if something is not right, do not do it. If something is not true, do not say it. This seemingly simple maxim holds the principle that frees us from the trap of false gratitude. Gratitude does not mean accepting wrongdoing, nor sacrificing peace and dignity to please another. True gratitude is sincere recognition, but one that still guards principle and personal boundaries. The Stoic draws a clear line between duty and coercion. Duty arises from reason, from the recognition that an action aligns with values and justice. Coercion, by contrast, springs from imposed guilt, from the fear that refusal will mark us as disloyal. One who acts from duty feels at peace. One who acts from coercion feels resentment and injustice. Thus, the critical question is, do I act because I believe this is right, or because I fear the cost of saying no? Another mark of manipulation through gratitude is imbalance. A true helper does not endlessly remind you of their deed, nor turn support into a permanent debt. A manipulator does the opposite. They revive the favor again and again to keep you beneath them. They want you always in repayment, always burdened by obligation, so that your actions are easier to control. Unless you recognize this, the relationship becomes a distorted exchange where the debt is designed never to end. The Stoic trains by building firm boundaries. They honor kindness, but they also say no when requests contradict principle. They may thank sincerely, yet still affirm, "I cannot do this because it is not right." Refusal does not erase gratitude. In fact, it proves gratitude is pure, untouched by exploitation. If you yield again and again from fear of seeming ungrateful, you gradually lose yourself, and the relationship no longer rests on respect but on fear. A practical exercise is to ask often, do my actions arise from freedom? Am I doing this because I truly believe it is right, or because I feel forced by someone's past help? If the answer leans toward compulsion, it is a sign gratitude is becoming a chain. Then analyze the hidden cost. How much energy, how much clarity, how much self-respect does this demand drain from me? If after helping I feel bitterness or injustice, then it is no longer gratitude, but self-betrayal. Seneca once wrote, "No one is happy who lives only for themselves, and no one is whole who gives everything away without thought." This underscores balance. We must give, but we must also keep, for endless giving is no longer kindness, but self-destruction. In the same spirit, gratitude must also have limits. It must rest upon freedom, not compulsion. A favor turned into a shackle was never truly help. Remember that the value of a person is not measured by how much they repay, but by their ability to preserve integrity. When you draw boundaries and refuse requests that violate principle, you are not ungrateful. You are upholding fairness for both sides. The one who truly helped you will understand and respect this. Only the one who seeks to exploit you will call such refusal betrayal. And their reaction is the clearest measure of whether their kindness was real or manipulation. In the end, the Stoic never denies gratitude, but neither do they let it become a chain. They thank, they repay within reason, but they do not lose themselves to maintain a debt endlessly invoked. They understand that gratitude must walk with freedom, for only then does it keep its nobility. And they know that saying no with calm resolve is one of the surest ways to protect gratitude from being twisted into a tool of control. 5. Selective sharing. Human beings have a natural need for connection, for sharing, and for being understood. From the beginning, language and communication were tools that allowed us to survive and form communities. To confide, to reveal one's inner life, or to speak of private experiences is an important part of building relationships. But the truth must be faced. Not everyone deserves to hear what is most hidden within you. Not all curiosity is born of goodwill, and not every show of concern is meant to help. In many cases, what you share can become material for others to exploit, twist, or use for their advantage. For this reason, the Stoic always emphasizes discipline in sharing. Choose carefully what to say, to whom, and under what circumstances. The danger of oversharing lies in the fact that once you speak, you hand over a portion of control to another. The details you reveal are no longer yours, but information in their possession. If they are trustworthy, this can build understanding, but if they lack good intent, your words become the blade that turns against you. In today's world, this truth is even clearer. Social media encourages openness, urging people to share more, to speak honestly. But behind such encouragement, there is not always safety. Often, speaking too much does not create connection, but only exposes unnecessary weaknesses. The Stoic does not oppose sharing. They understand that connection requires openness and exchange, but they warn that sharing must walk with wisdom and observation. Epictetus once reminded, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen more than we speak." This is not only advice about manners, but a principle of life. Keep the inner self from becoming public property. Listening more allows us to judge whether others are worthy of knowing us. Speaking less preserves what ought to be protected. One sign that caution is needed is when a relationship lacks balance. If you are always the one to speak, always the one to reveal, while the other seldom shares or avoids disclosure, then the relationship is one-sided. What appears as concern may only be a process of information gathering. True understanding is mutual. You share and receive sharing in return. Without this symmetry, you are not in dialogue, but in a disguised interrogation. In that case, silence or restraint becomes the wisest act. The Stoic also stresses the idea of an inner fortress. They see the soul as a citadel. Thoughts, memories, worries, and weaknesses are its core. No citadel leaves its gates wide open for all. It has doors, guards, and rules. You cannot allow anyone who knocks to walk straight in. Likewise, you should not let anyone who asks immediately hear all your truth. What lies deep within should only be entrusted to those who have proven by action that they deserve to enter. A key practice is deliberate silence. In many situations, people rush to fill the void with words. When silence falls, they grow uneasy and quickly say something, often about themselves. But such haste reveals more than is necessary. The Stoic counsels us to make peace with silence. Do not see it as emptiness to be filled, but as armor that protects you. When you accept silence, you feel no pressure to speak words untested by thought. It is also vital to distinguish between sharing to unburden and sharing to build. Sharing to unburden often springs from the desire to cast off inner weight, but it easily makes you dependent on the listener. Sharing to build, however, has purpose: to clarify an issue, to seek a way forward, to strengthen trust. The Stoic advises that every word should serve a purpose. If sharing only eases you briefly, but later harms you when used against you, it is not wise. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the soul is dyed by the color of its attachments. When you continually share with the unworthy, your soul is dyed with unease, for you know your privacy has been misplaced. But if you reserve your sharing for the right place and time, your soul is dyed with peace, for you know the sacred has been entrusted to those who honor it. Practicing selective sharing also requires trust in your intuition. If, after conversation, you feel lighter, understood, it is a sign you trusted rightly. If instead you feel hollow, uneasy, or exposed, trust that signal. It is the inner warning that the other is not safe ground. The Stoics teach that clarity comes not only from reason, but also from listening to how the soul feels after each choice. Above all, remember, you owe no one the nakedness of your soul. You need not reveal everything just because someone is curious. You are under no obligation to answer every question. Guarding your inner life is not selfishness, it is self-respect. For once words leave you, they can never be reclaimed. And when you keep the power to choose what is spoken, you also keep mastery over your life. In the end, selective sharing does not make you cold, it makes you strong. It preserves your wholeness so that you do not become an open book for anyone to read. It keeps your inner life intact, allowing trust and closeness to grow only with those truly worthy. The Stoic reminds us, we are not here to be fully known by all, but to live with wisdom and dignity. And the discipline of selective speech is one of the surest paths to that dignity. Looking back at all that has been examined, I realize the greatest strength a person can possess does not lie in persuasion or outward power, but in the ability to preserve inner self-control. In today's world, where information and emotion are constantly exploited, protecting the mind from being pulled by fear, swept away by joy, chained by distorted gratitude, or exposed by careless speech is the way we safeguard our dignity. I believe true courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to hold to principle when fear is tested. I also believe true happiness is not found in the approval of the crowd, but in the ability to stand firm in silence when others demand that we act their way. And I believe even more that peace is not a gift from outside, but the result of discipline of refusing to hand control of ourselves to anyone. If you find these reflections helpful, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you will not miss what comes next. The most important reminder I want to leave with you is this: your greatest strength does not come from controlling the world, but from controlling yourself. When you master your inner life, you are strong enough to walk through any storm with calm. See you again in the next video.